And more on breaking news out of the White House now. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump are quarantining at the White House as we speak.
As we said, both tested positive for coronavirus. Erica Zucco joins us now live. Erica, do we have any idea how they contracted this?
Well, Barry and Sarah, of course, it's hard to tell for sure, but what the president said was that Hope Hicks had tested positive and that they were watching closely for their own results. He had said earlier in the night that they planned to quarantine until they knew those results, and when they did get them, he tweeted out that information. We also saw statements coming down from the White House physician as well as the First Lady and other officials. Want to break down for you what the president has shared so far, as well as those other officials that I just mentioned. Now, the president tweeted out last night all of this happening overnight. At 11:54, he shared that he and the First Lady had tested positive for COVID-19. We'll begin the quarantine and recovery process immediately, and we'll get through this together. First Lady Melania Trump posted about an hour later saying, quote, "As too many Americans have done this year, she and the president are quarantining at home, feeling good, and have postponed all upcoming engagements." And Vice President Pence posted that he and Second Lady Karen Pence send their love and join millions across the nation praying for a full and swift recovery. Hope Hicks had traveled to Cleveland for the debate with President Trump, and after she tested positive, the president shared he and the First Lady were quarantining.
She tested positive. And I just went out with a test. I'll see what, because we spent a lot of time, and the First Lady just went out with a test also. So whether we quarantine or whether we have it, I don't know.
And the White House physician released a statement confirming their positive results and also saying that they were doing well at the time and that his team will be watching them vigilantly. Back to you.